year is 1946. A girl baby is born and is welcomed into the world. According to legend, her family, which consisted of 12 children, was so impoverished that they used a sack of cornmeal to pay the doctor who delivered her. When she was younger, her name was Dolly Rebecca Parton. Billboards, movie theaters, movie screens, and music halls around the world would all eventually display that name. After all these years, Dolly Parton has evolved beyond her role as a country music star. She is a historic figure. She has been nominated for almost 50 Grammys and won 11 during her career. She also established the Imagination Library, a foundation that has distributed more than 200 million free books to children, and turned Dollywood into one of America's favorite theme parks. Behind the wigs, jewelry, and one-liners, however, Dolly has been leading a double life. For 30 years, she deliberately maintained a more subdued part of herself hidden from the public, while establishing a public persona that everyone believed they were familiar with. The struggle between Dolly the woman and Dolly the figure is what makes her narrative so captivating. This has nothing to do with deceit or controversy. It's about staying alive. In the novel, a girl from the Smoky Mountains learns early on that in order to protect what matters to her in private, she must behave a certain way in public. The case against Dolly Parton may have been singing Coat of Many Colors, but her life had a lot more levels than anyone anticipated. We must first learn how far Dolly went before we can comprehend her double life. On January 19, 1946, Dolly Parton was born in Locust Ridge, Tennessee. In the Great Smoky Mountains, Locust Ridge is a tiny community close to Pittman Center. 12 children were born to sharecropper and construction worker Robert Lee Parton and A. Lee Parton. She was the fourth kid they had. Mary Lee used faith and song to keep the family together. It's said that Dolly's father handed the doctor a bag of cornmeal when she was born since the Partons didn't have enough money to pay him. Over the years, Dolly has laughed as she recounted this story numerous times, never concealing the fact that she was born into nothing. Some of her most well-known songs, such as Coat of Many Colors, which sings about her mother's patched coat made from used clothing, are about poverty. The cabin was one room, crowded, noisy, and blaring with music. Lee, who taught her children Appalachian folk songs, taught Dolly the hymns she heard in church. By the age of 10, she was already performing on Knoxville radio stations. She had already attended the Grand Ole Opry for the first time by the age of 13. She was introduced by Johnny Cash. Dolly already knew where she was heading. In 1964, the day after graduating from high school, she traveled to Nashville, determined to pursue her ambition, saying, "I always knew I was meant for more than a cabin in the woods. I just didn't know how far I'd have to go to get there." At first, it wasn't simple. At the time, Nashville was full of optimistic people, and Dolly's high-pitched, mountain-toned voice wasn't exactly well-liked. However, she never gave up, which was her hidden weapon. When she signed with Monument Records, they tried to push her in the pop direction, but she quickly found her niche in country. Her big break came in 1967 when she was requested to appear on television by Porter Wagoner, star of The Porter Wagoner Show. Dolly's fame arose from that collaboration. They performed together, went on national tours, and amassed a sizable fan base. Even though Dolly wore the same clothes and smiled like everyone else, she was already displaying signs of having a different existence where she wasn't content to serve others. Dolly had to make the difficult decision to leave Wagoner's show and pursue a solo career in 1974. To ease the grief, she penned the melancholy farewell song I Will Always Love You, which went on to become one of the most well-known songs in history. That one act sums up Dolly's double life nicely. Despite her outward sweetness, she has a heart full of difficult decisions, desire, and the drive to make her own way in the world. The girl had come from a poor background and was now well on her way to stardom. However, being famous required more than just having a good voice. It required a meticulously assembled image. Dolly's second life began to take form there. Dolly Parton would tell you straight out, "It costs a lot of money to look this cheap." That one-liner, spoken with a wink, says it everything about how savvy she is about how she acts. Women were expected to keep country music calm and lovely in the 1970s, when males wearing cowboy hats continued to be its public face. Dolly decided to enlarge that. She wore crystal gowns that glistened like disco balls when the lights were on. Her lips were a fiery red, and it was piled up into sky-high wigs. It was about a woman who was talked about behind closed doors, yet was renowned for her bravery, and she once said that the town back home had affected her style. If that's trashy, then trashy sure looks fun. That's exactly what Dolly thought. But there's more. Dolly was more than simply her attire. It was made of leather. By creating Dolly Parton, with her large hair, revealing clothing, and extravagant femininity, she provided people with something so captivating to gaze at that they neglected to go further. Wearing that gear allowed Dolly to keep her private life just that, private. She has acknowledged sleeping with her makeup on because she was so committed to keeping this commitment. Why? Since there was a risk of a fire or earthquake in the middle of the night, she wanted to be ready to greet them without letting down their guard. Consider how much your appearance matters to you. Although it may seem like a lot of work, Dolly saw it as a means of surviving in a field that dismisses women who appear too normal. Dolly, of course, used the attention to her advantage. She stopped reporters in their tracks by joking back when they mentioned that she might get plastic surgery. If something's bagging, sagging, or dragging, I'll tuck it, suck it, or pluck it, she once stated. She maintained control of the narrative while transforming emotion into comedy. Perhaps most intriguing, though, is how she managed to strike a balance between being transparent and keeping things under wraps. Dolly could spend hours discussing her hair, makeup, and even her large breast line. However, she revealed more about the more personal aspects of her life, such as her marriage, her issues, and her religious beliefs. Her admirers believed they knew her, but in reality, they only saw the aspects of her that she wanted them to. This act of balancing wasn't a trick. There was a plan. She turned Dolly into a show, which rescued her soul. She established a place for herself where she could take the pressures of fame, keep her work in command, and still be true to herself. However, as we shall see, Dolly's contradictions become more pronounced. Fans were taken aback when she posed for Playboy, despite the fact that she was the stunning queen of country music. She was a devoted Christian who attempted to reach the top of the mainstream and rock charts while writing religious songs. In addition to being generous and caring, she had excellent business sense. She established herself as a brand decades before it was the norm. The diamonds and wig weren't only a style statement. She was able to live two lives at once because of these masks. She created one for each of them as well as for herself. Dolly Parton had established herself as a brand by the time the wigs and diamonds were quite long and dazzling. However, all brands have fine print. Additionally, Dolly's was scrawled in invisible ink. Let's start by discussing her marriage, which is the greatest enigma. The date of their marriage was May 30th, 1966. Carl Thomas Dean was married to Dolly Parton. Dolly, Carl, her mother, the preacher, and the preacher's wife were the only people present for the service. She dated Carl for about 6 years. Most of his admirers, however, believe he is a ghost. The man doesn't show up in public very often, never walks the red carpet, and has turned down interviews so many times that he might win an Olympic gold medal. This sparked a lot of conversation. Was he real? Were they separating in secret? Was Dolly attempting to conceal a romantic relationship? She joked that people thought she had a dummy in the closet that she called Carl, which made them chuckle. Carl truly just didn't like being in the center. Carl was operating an asphalt filling company and leading a peaceful life in Nashville, while Dolly was creating Dollywood, touring stadiums, and appearing in 9 to 5. It's such an enormous contrast. Carl felt comfortable wearing work boots, while Dolly looked stunning in sparkles. That was one of the most obvious indications of her double life. Then there's Dolly's faith. She has never shied away from discussing her belief in Christ. She was always surrounded by church music because she was raised in the Smoky Mountains. She claims to have released multiple gospel CDs and to pray daily. However, Dolly's traditional followers were taken aback when she posed for Playboy in 1978. She didn't pose naked. The idea of a country girl singing church in Playboy was nearly incorrect, despite the fact that she was wearing the well-known bunny suit with ears and all. Dolly was not bothered by it. She then smiled and claimed she did it because she thought she looked cute at the moment and wanted to show it off while she could. Holding a Bible in one hand and bunny ears in the other is very Dolly. There was never a box that she seemed to fit into. That might hold the secret. The double life was not a cover for evil. It was about avoiding being restrained. Her songs say the same thing. Remember that she penned Jolene and I Will Always Love You, her two most well-known songs, in a single night in 1973. One is about jealousy and wanting something. The other is a heartfelt farewell. Dolly was navigating multiple emotional worlds at once, as evidenced by her ability to display so many distinct emotions at once. And then there's her massive enterprise. For many admirers of Dollywood, it resembles a theme park complete with roller coasters and cinnamon buns. Behind the scenes, however, Dolly is a savvy entrepreneur. She owns multiple Dollywood-affiliated businesses and has meticulously cultivated her brand. She has also invested in media endeavors. However, she downplays this aspect of herself and frequently pretends to be a simple country girl while making choices that would have a significant financial impact. Being a shrewd CEO when she isn't wearing a fancy dress is another aspect of her double existence. Let's remember to assist others as well. Dolly's Imagination Library has distributed more than 200 million free books to children worldwide since its founding in 1995, along with grants and the well-known $1 million she donated to Vanderbilt University for COVID-19 vaccine research. She has also donated money to hospitals. Despite her kindness, she swiftly mocks it and claims that she doesn't do it for attention. Even Dolly's generosity has a dark side. She recently remarked, "I just think it's important to give back if you've been blessed, and I've been blessed more than I ever deserved. People can see your kindness." Dolly finds meaning in her beliefs and the hardship she experienced as a child. She doesn't talk about this aspect of her life as much. Dolly was living on two tracks by the 1980s and 1990s, a very private one and a very public one. They were collaborating effectively. I wonder why she stuck to her separation for so long. Because it's difficult to lead two lives at once. It might sound amazing to having two lives, but actually it's more like balancing fire. It was run by Dolly for many years. Wigs and comedic comebacks aren't the only explanation. The first is the pressure of fame. Imagine being aware that millions of people are interested in hearing your tale, your secrets, and your heartbreaks every single day. Fame may kill you if you don't set boundaries, as Dolly discovered early on. By crafting a flashy version of herself, she gave her supporters something to appreciate while keeping the tender aspects of her heart buried. It was self-preservation in order. Let's discuss this topic next. When Dolly began performing country music in the 1960s, women were frequently viewed as being kind, obedient, and secondary. By making herself look more female with cosmetics, wigs, and weird body parts, she gained control of the joke before it could be used against her. When some claimed she was too flamboyant, she laughed even harder. She joked about her bust since they made fun of it. Strength is that. She was also able to climb ladders that would have been inaccessible without that vision. Being in command comes in third. Dolly was not just a singer. She operated a business and wrote music. The right to distribute her work belongs to her. Whitney Houston made a lot of money when her rendition of "I Will Always Love You" became one of the all-time best-selling songs. She understood she needed to prepare because she valued both her singing and her finances. While everyone else thought she was playing checkers, Dolly played chess, signed contracts, and developed enterprises in private. Everyone was occupied by the public Dolly. But don't get me wrong, there were risks associated with leading a double life. When people held secrets, rumors started to circulate. For decades, tabloids fabricated tales about her marital status, sexual orientation, and potential extramarital affairs. Dolly laughed at these things and remarked, "People are always talking. If they're talking about me, at least they're leaving someone else alone." However, it must have been difficult for you to constantly alter your responses and steer clear of inquiries. There were moments when the tension was obvious. In interviews from the 1980s, Dolly would pause before answering questions about Carl Dean or traveling alone. In her 1994 book, Dolly, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, she discussed her struggles and self-doubt. She also acknowledged that she considered suicide in the 1980s, which served as a stark reminder that there was a real person behind the wigs who was attempting to cope with life's challenges. If the double life was so hard, why did you keep it? Because it would have been worse to give it all away. She was able to develop, try new things, and survive by keeping her private and public selves apart. In some respects, it worked rather effectively when Dolly declared, "I'm not going to limit myself just because people won't accept the fact that I can do something else." In this sense, fans found it funny when Dolly made comments about her bust while wearing a jeweled jumpsuit. When Dolly got home, removed her hat, and sat with Carl Dean on their porch, she knew she was safe. Although both lives were significant, they didn't have to conflict. However, maintaining that balance for 30 years was extremely risky. There were times when the rope shook, as with all high-wire shows. When Dolly's true self emerged from the shadows to prove to everyone that she was more than just a glamorous and sassy person, Dolly ensured she had a part of her life unaffected by celebrity by keeping Carl out of the spotlight. It was a combination of two acts. the world-famous singer Dolly Parton and her private wife, Dolly Parton, who prepared dinner at home. That gap between the two kept her calm in a field that eats people alive. Few of her admirers were aware that she battled depression in the 1980s. In her book, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, she discussed that period. She covered it up with her signature enthusiasm and joy. But beneath all the glamour, she was secretly battling stress, depression, and health issues. She eventually discussed those moments after many years, demonstrating once more that the Dolly we saw on stage was not the complete picture. Dolly's glittering mask wasn't a deception, you could argue. There was a plan. That's how she gave us what we wanted and made sure she got what she truly needed. She is, on the one hand, the picture of Southern hospitality, friendly, giving, and focused on family. However, she is bold, edgy, and unafraid to shock people. Who else could pretend to be Playboy while also contributing millions of dollars to medical research and literacy development for children? That's Dolly. She donned the well-known rabbit costume in 1978. At the age of 75, she repeated the act on her husband's birthday, telling her followers, "I did it because I still had the boobs in the waistline." Very Dolly. Then there's her generosity. Giving back isn't all that Dolly does. She transforms the notion of giving back. More than 200 million free books have been distributed to children worldwide by her Imagination Library since it began as a modest initiative in Tennessee. In 2020, she donated $1 million to support Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine research as a prank. People said, "Forget superheroes. Dolly Parton is the reason we can go outside again." However, this is only one of the more intriguing ways that she contradicts herself. Despite her success with country music, Dolly has never shied away from experimenting with other genres. In the 1980s, she transitioned into pop music with successes like 9 to 5 and Here You Come Again. In 2023, at the age of 77, she released her album Rockstar, which forced her to embrace rock. We will discuss songs by Stevie Nicks, Elton John, Paul McCartney, and others. Reviewers and fans were taken aback, but Dolly simply grinned. She claimed that the only reason she created the song was because she believed it was necessary to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's Dolly's style. She doesn't simply appear when called upon. She comes out bigger, louder, and brighter than everyone else. Nevertheless, a common thread unites all of the contradictions. Dolly does what she wants. She is not constrained by any groups or regulations. She can simultaneously be good and attractive, modest yet ostentatious, private and large. That's what makes her timeless, in fact. The narrative of Dolly Parton is the best American fairy tale ever. She was born in a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains. The room was paid for with a sack of cornmeal. She spent most of her childhood without shoes, electricity, or running water. However, she leveraged those modest beginnings to become one of the most remarkable musical careers ever. She didn't lead a double life to avoid difficulty. Getting through was the goal. Dolly created a stunning public persona that allowed her to thrive on stage while concealing her true self behind the curtain. For 30 years, she led her double life without disappointing anyone. She simultaneously deceived everyone. Perhaps it is the true lesson. You may be several things at once, as Dolly Parton demonstrates. Glitter and grit, faith and freedom, or dreamlike and real are all possible. Dolly Parton the woman, and Dolly Parton the star, don't have to be mutually exclusive. Both can prosper. Dolly lived two lives for 30 years. She lived her own life, which is what we truly mean. And it wasn't the only reason she became well known. Long after the last rhinestone is gone, people will still be discussing her story because she became a living star. I appreciate you persevering through it. What startled you the most about Dolly Parton's double life too? Comment below. While you're down there, click like, subscribe, and bell to ensure that you're always at the top of the list for our upcoming video.